Well, welcome to the episode today. Today I have a very special guest, Andrea Willemin from southern Brazil is actually joining us for our call here today. Andrea has an amazing background in several topics, and what I find particularly interesting, she has experience as a lawyer in the European area as well as in Latin America. And she combines her legal background with IT know-how and IT expertise. But Andrea, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Thomas. Thank you for the presentation. Yeah, my name is Andrea Willemin. I'm a data protection officer certified by the European Community. I have 20 years working experience with the protection personal data and especially with privacy by design. In addition to be a European and Brazilian lawyer and IT expert, I am a researcher and a doctoral candidate in informatics science. And I'm also a master in information society law and intellectual property, both from the Federal University of Santa Catarina here in Brazil. And I'm graduated and also postgraduated in data protection and information security from University of Maastricht in Holland and EPFL in Switzerland. And actually, currently, I'm working in Brazil with a consultancy in private and the public sector and training data managers for the public sector also. So it's a little bit about me.
Well, that's a lot. And well, first of all, thanks for joining us. I know you must be a very busy person these days because everybody's looking at data privacy, data protection. And actually, that's going to be our topic for this initial episode. And who knows, if there's interest, we might do some more topics about the same, because we found out in our pre-discussion that it's actually a very rich, a very wide topic that impacts a lot of aspects of doing business. No?
Exactly. It's a big new team for talking about in companies and in government and corporations and also everywhere we have data traffic, so it's something very important for the moment.
Yes, from your experience, from your observations in working with let's say enterprises and also institutions. I understand you also work with institutions, right? From your perspective, why does data protection and compliance become so important right now?
Yeah, compliance becomes a priority now. Now it's very important for the companies, and they need to improve a new culture and create a specific budget and organize teams to deal with this team. And it's very important for us because we can only after that start to talk about personal rights that now you have to deal with in the company. So it's now a priority for them, and they need to start to structure this inside these companies and organizations now.
Yeah, it's certainly something I'm seeing right now. There's an increased awareness about the topic. And as always, you can take it from two different perspectives, right? You can say, oh, it's an obligation, it's a burden for the company. But you can also take the point of view and ask, how could it help us in order to solve this problem for our clients, for our business partners, right? Because at the end of the day, everybody has to solve the same problem. So why not make a competitive advantage out of that, right? Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, exactly. And it's the same problem for everyone now. And the most important, it's changing everything for everyone at the same time. So if you are not in compliance, it becomes difficult for you to deal with others companies, but it's also difficult for you to improve your roles and with the law and all your personal data. So it's something that also, if you are in compliance now, you have something more to offer your customers, to your partners. And for this moment, it's very important. And people are asking for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's also fair to say that a lot of organizations have to catch up on a lot of topics, right? And
Exactly.
What we see right now during the corona crisis, the worldwide pandemic, a lot of organizations are suddenly becoming aware and struggling and say, okay, how do we make a more mobile-friendly website, a more compliant website, and something that is trustworthy, trustful for the consumers? Right. I was interested, where do you see any differences or commonalities in working with companies in Latin America or South America, especially Brazil and Europe? I see, for example, a lot of companies here who want to do business in Brazil and Brazilian companies who want to do business in Europe, right? But where do you see commonalities and differences?
Yeah, in Europe, we have the framework from GDPR, and it's more clear. Here in Brazil, it's quite new. In South America, for example, Latin America, we have different frameworks you have to pay attention now and improve here. And it's not the same than GDPR. So it's very important to take care and see all these differences to put it in place. It's not really exactly as the GDPR says. So you have some particularities, and sometimes it's huge particularities for each country here in South America and Latin America, and it's kind of different from GDPR. But what is easy for us is GDPR is the biggest framework that we have in the moment. So it's easier if you are based in GDPR compliance to be also compliant with Brazil and the other laws here in South America and in Latin America. In United States and Canada, it's a little different, no? But I think in some times, I don't know how, it will be the same for everyone. But for the moment, you have lots of particularities to be taken care of, no?
Yeah. Absolutely. Actually, a GDPR is not GDPR, right? Because it sounds like it's a common framework, but what I see happening right now across Europe, even across the countries, you have different interpretation of how the legal framework should be applied, right? So you have, and I'm doing obviously a lot of business with clients in Germany and Switzerland, but in France, for example, you have the so-called CNIL, which is the Commission l'Informatique, and they have a different interpretation. And some experts say they are actually a little bit advanced in their interpretation of how to implement, for example, consent management in websites, now, which is one of the more practical topics that companies are looking for. Yeah. What are the key challenges that you see in enterprises and organizations at the moment?
The key challenge for this, I think it's, for me, the adequacy of several aspects is very important. For example, for the technical aspects, we can think about the adequacy of the technologies. It's very, very huge things to do. And we need new investments and new systems and new developments in this area. And employees' resistance to change is also important thing to think. Other aspects, legal aspects, no? Then there you need to review all policies and contracts. You need to establish new rules from personal data in the company. I can say here about the process, contracts, policies, all of it you need to review. And what is very hard for legal aspects, that you have fines, no, that can come from the authorities if you are not in compliance with. But the problem also, you can break contracts if you are not in compliance. You can lose your partners, because if they are in compliance and you are not, in some moment you can't be partner anymore. So it's very important to take care here and think about it, no? Other aspects, but I think you are better than me to talk about it's change management, and that it's something very huge to take care with compliance now in the companies now, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, what the privacy discussion also surfaces is also some kind of challenges and weaknesses within organizations, right? When I see and when I'm working with companies right now, there's sometimes the tools mindset, right? They ask, okay, what are the tools that we need to implement in order to be compliant? And the first thing is I have to change that mental model completely, right? Because it's not done with the tool. And maybe some companies had this idea, okay, we implement the privacy banner on our website and then we are done, right? And since last October, that is not even in compliance anymore. So what you need to do is offer a complete and more granular opt-in solution for the clients who are visiting the website or the e-commerce store, for example. But about change management, what I found interesting is now people have to work together, right? So the technical development has to work with the marketing team, with the supply chain team, because every change that you make in one area, every small little minute change has to be let's say, in tune with the other areas. So you have to become compliant at first, and then you have to remain compliant. So a really good change management process, I think it's probably at the core of data privacy and data protection, right? It's much more than the contract side or the tool side.
Yeah, for me, it's the biggest challenge, yeah, because they are the different minds, no, and when they are together, it's kind a challenge for us now to be all together and changing things. But it's very nice. And for marketing, for example, what's something very important, it is the new policies and the management of consent and cookies, for example. Now it's kind of new, and now you need the managing the consent that you have inside your website, and it's you need to improve it. And the other point is it's very important. It's also is cookie. Now, so for all of this, we need new policies. You need a management of the consents and the management of the cookies, and all of it is some new to put inside our policies and in our routine and in our new makers. No, it's very.
So the question, of course, for the audience and listeners and viewers of our discussion is, okay, maybe at some point I get it, right? But the question is, how should I start? Where should I start? What's the good starting point, and what are kind of the building blocks that I should be thinking about? Could you tell a little bit more from your experience and how you approach the opportunities?
Yeah, the first step to starting normally is to call a data protection officer and start from the really beginning. That is a diagnostic. Now you need to know what you have in place in your organization first. Then you can identify all the risks. You can identify all the process. From that you can start a new strategy for data. No, and it's like you need take a first picture for your company and see there where you need to start, where you have more risk, where you really need to invest in first, and then you go through that, because you can't start everywhere, and you need to have a plan, a very nice plan to put it in place. So to structure your teams, structure your systems, structure your all your process. For that, you take the first one picture of the company, and you decide with the high management what is the most important, where you need really to focus. Sometimes it could be some process, some systems. For example, the website, perhaps we start here because you have lots of risks. We have e-commerce, so it's open for our consumers, so you need to start there. You need to change the system that you have lots of problems with breach. So you can take this first look of the company and start there.
I guess the key is to bring some method to the madness, right? That's a good starting point or way to put it. And so from what you're explaining, I think you have some kind of formal framework that you advise on, right?
Yes, you need to work with these different frameworks, no? Because each company has his market and his particularities. So for that, you need really to be in accordance with the law framework, but also with the best framework for this sector of economy. So it's quite different when you are working with financial sector from something from IT sector. All of them has the same law framework for them, but the way you are adapting the tools for that are different, and the policies and the way you are talking with your client and the way you are putting this in your process for your employees and also for your consumers. So you need to see all of that and improve the best way that you can continuous work in your sector of the best way there.
Yeah, very interesting. So I think this the one way to think about this, it's kind of a framework which need to include technical aspects, the legal aspects, change and cultural aspects, and also provides, let's say, a continuous compliance effort to begin with, right? My experience in working with some companies, so typically they approach me for growth initiatives, right? And then I also do an inventory. I call it 360 or a growth insight inventory. And sometimes I discover not so pretty pieces, no? That the website needs to be modernized or brought to a new standard. And sometimes in many cases, it's about data protection. And one observation was that it feels sometimes like a never-ending story. You start on one topic, and once you unpeel the onion, you find more and more and more topics. So I think it's really of the essence to figure out what is your method of selecting projects and work through the projects, maybe in an agile way, one after another, to become very quickly compliant so you can move forward with your marketing and growth initiatives, right? Okay. And I think once you have that level, then optimization becomes key, because I think if you're not compliant, that basically means you cannot use the user data for what it is intended for in sales and marketing, for example, and that could kill your marketing funnel, right? So it's really important to figure out, and I really love the expression that you brought up at the beginning, privacy by design, I think is key, because retrofitting it afterwards, it's not going to work, right, in many cases.
It is the problem, because there are so many aspects that you need to see at the same time. But what is the most important, no? And if you don't have this first picture from your company, this first photography, it's very difficult for your company to take a decision, and the good decision. And what is the good decision? The good decision is, where are my personal data inside my company, and then I start to flow and create a new flow for my personal data inside a privacy by design. Privacy by design is a methodology that helps you to put data in technical ways or process or in law ways, no? In a methodology that they combine together, and then you can take care of all of them at the same time, and it brings you the know-how how to do that, and at the same time, and with different sectors, different views, and for different proposals also. So it's very important to understand that privacy by design help us to create this new economy based on data, and for us, in this case, for create this new personal data economy, where we have to take this compliance, to be in compliance, you need to be in compliance, and at the same way, you need to continuously be in the market and selling and do everything we do. So it's the big challenge.
I completely agree, and now it has a new dimension because suddenly we see, I think this Corona crisis, it's serving like a catalyst. Now, many organizations realize we have to go digital, right? We have to be digital in terms of customer acquisition, service delivery, product delivery, sales, marketing, human resources, and so on, right? And I think also many organizations realize, at least when I'm talking to them, they ask me, okay, give us a checklist, what we need to do. No? And I say, okay, I can give you the basics that we need to do, but really what it is, it's like, I call this a discovery-driven process, right? Why? Because the legal framework is evolving at the same time. The legal framework, the interpretation of the legal framework, and the technical capabilities. Even the platform providers, for example, for so-called consent management solutions, they are also in the same game. They say, okay, we are all trying to figure out how to interpret the law and how to help our customers to interpret the law, so you can make conscious decision about where you need to be compliant, what is a must-have, and what is maybe a nice-to-have. So many topics, I guess.
Oh, it's a lot of topics for us, and for me, it's a big deal to find what the consumer or the companies they are thinking about this theme, because we can look for this for different ways, and each way that you take a look of personal data, it's a different way to put it in place. And it's for me, it's why it's so magic also. No, I like it a lot, because you have to figure out with different perspective of the same theme, but in different ways. So for IT people, for example, inside the company, when they need to change all the systems and do it be in compliance, it's a challenge, a very hard challenge. But all things they do there can affect legal aspects. So for lawyers, it's another challenge, because now they have to put in policies and they have to bring it to the contracts, new aspects that you have adjusted in your IT. And you need to bring all of that for what I say, for process, internal process and external process from the company with her partner, them partners, or for contracts, or with government, and so it's consumers, no, and it's very huge. And the best way to start all of it is starting.
It is starting and discovering, right? I agree. Actually, to your point about the consumers, maybe one last thought here. Recently, I came across a study. I think it was carried out in Germany, and I'll see if I can find a link that we can put in the show notes of this episode. And the study found that it was about behavioral science, right, or behavioral economics research. And the study found that when consumers see a worthwhile reason or purpose why the data is collected, right, and a trustworthy purpose, they are much more inclined to share the data. And I think that's yet another aspect, right? So the question is, how do you find out and how do you communicate to your client or prospective clients and stakeholders what is the worthwhile, noble goal of collecting the data? And I think this was carried out, and observation came actually from the Corona crisis. No? A lot of people also said, well, if my data can help serve the society, for example, I'm much more inclined and willing to share personal information, even detailed information, which is usually very protected, like medical information, etc. So there we see it really depends what is the purpose, so what you do and how you actually do it, right?
Exactly. And consumers, when you don't explain to them what are you doing with them data, it's very complicated. I think there start something that you have to pay attention and understand that people are not accepting very well anymore, that you share data or use for another purpose that what you are doing. So it's very important how to communicate it. Now it's a very nice point to deal with. It's very nice.
Very good. Yeah, I think that's a lot actually for our episode today. So I'm very grateful for this. And you know, when we discussed this this talk, we already came up with some ideas. I think there will be some new topics which we found interesting, and I hope that we can get some feedback from the listeners and viewers of the episodes. So in future, we might want to talk about how it is to do business across the border, for example, when you are a company in Europe, to do business in South America. If you're a Brazilian company, how do you expand to Europe? Talking a little bit more about the frameworks, the tools, and also how to approach the topics. And one of my favorite topics is marketing optimization. So how do you optimize, for example, your consent? I think there are many, many topics. And I hope that we can carry on this series and help people who are facing these challenges.
Yeah, it could be very nice. And for me, also some topics that I like a lot, it's, as you said, for me, privacy by design is one of them, because you need to change minds to do it. And it's very important for this moment, no? And also different frameworks that you need to deal with in cases you are expanding in your e-commerce for other countries, as South America, in like Brazil, Colombia, or Argentina. You need completely different laws, so you need to pay attention for this kind of points. No, it's very nice.
Yeah, I think this is also a very good segue in future segments, and maybe we can share some of the more successful practices that have helped organizations to protect data and provide more trustworthy and engagement methods with the stakeholders and their communities. Okay.
And that's very nice, Tom.
Thank you very much, Andrea, and I'm looking forward to our next talk.
Okay, thank you a lot for you too. I'm very, very happy, and I will be here for the next one. You see.
Great.
Thank you.